Daniel, welcome back.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
Lovely
really
to see you again.
Likewise. It feels like it's been so long. Yeah, I appreciate you. Yeah, I've missed you too. Yeah, I appreciate you coming back for another one, man. It really is. It's always. I know I see you at work all the time, but it's always fun just getting to hang out with you as well outside of work.
Hell yeah,
So,
man.
it's
I
always a
highly
good
agree.
time. Yeah, and then especially now that we're getting to do conversations like this, talk about things that we enjoy and we're passionate about. So that's
excited.
A lot of fun. So I appreciate you coming back in.
Anytime.
Yeah, awesome. How have you been doing?
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
I feel guilty most days that I'm doing so well. I'm like, man, can we throw in some suffering in here a little bit? You know, like, is there, like, I feel like
things are just too good.
It's
right
too
now.
good. I think it's too good, honestly. I'm like, man, gosh, can I have a car breakdown or something, man? I need some kind of struggle.
Yeah. Hey, well, I'm glad to hear that. That's a good thing, when you're like, okay, things have been too good. It's almost like, okay, is something gonna happen?
Yeah, totally.
Can something happen? Yeah. Bring me back to reality a little bit.
Exactly. Yes, for sure. I wait for that other shoe to drop,
Yeah.
But that's all right. It's all right. We'll get there someday, I'm sure. I'm in no rush.
You're like, take your time, though, actually, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been putting in a lot of hard work, so I mean, it's the hard work paying off is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you coming in. Like I said, today we've got kind of a fun one. As you can see, Daniel was nice enough to bring his giant skeleton here. Got a little head tilt to him, and partially my fault, injuries along the drive. But yeah, so today, as you guys may have noticed from the title, our goal is to kind of go over just like a lot of common injuries as well as anatomy. So, Daniel, I think one of the big questions that I have for you as well, just kind of leading into everything, would just be when I know with common injuries, it's there's different kinds from all over the body. Your neck very easily is one of like the more injured things, as well as like your shoulder. I think, especially as we age, our back tends to be what I hear. I think most people, at least in my own experience, that's when most people tend to have their injuries, is like it's either their back, their shoulder, or their knees are some of the big ones as well. But I know like there's some having to do with your hips, just whether it be due from like tightness or like, an accident that happened a long time ago that you just never like properly, recovered from, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to kind of go over that as well later on, is just like how the recovery process has changed, which is an interesting topic to talk about. But I think one of the key things that I want to kind of bring to light is when someone says something like, oh, my back hurts, or, my shoulder's feeling really tight and it's hurting a little bit as well. What do you think most people should be looking for when it comes to especially those areas that are very, heavily taxed?
That's a really good question. Well, there's a few different things. So if somebody's just trying to kind of like figure this stuff out on their own, everyone just kind of automatically goes to stiffness. Everyone's just like, either they're like something's injured or something's just stiff, right?
Yeah.
It's just tight, right? And I think maybe we'll get a little bit into like fascia, right? And like the kind of chemical nature of fascia a little bit later. And so that's going to kind of play a role in this protocol as well. But you can have pain around a joint without having any kind of injury there at all. And sometimes I call it subconscious confidence, right? So it's not like, you're not like thinking of the confidence in the movement, right?
Yeah.
But if your brain or your central nervous system isn't really able to regulate the stability of the joint as properly as it should, then it loses confidence in that. And so sometimes there's an alarm bell that goes off, right? And that alarm bell going off saying, pay attention to this area, we interpret as pain.
Yeah.
Right. So one thing that I'll tell my clients sometimes, right, is if we can increase your awareness and therefore control of that area, sometimes that's the only thing that they needed to do. And that took away the pain.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
So more often than not, there's, there might be a mix of different things going on, right? So for instance, let's say you have a tight muscle on the front of the shoulder and it kind of pulls the shoulder forward a little bit, right? And it prevents, if we look at the skeleton right here real fast, there's kind of this like ceiling on top. So if you can see that in the video there, I'll kind of turn this little guy around here. This little bone that's right on top right here is attached to the scapula, the shoulder blade, and it's called the acromion. And there's a muscle that sits up at the front right here there's this little bone that's sticking up, and there's a muscle right here that connects to the rib cage called the pec minor.
Yeah.
And so if that pec minor gets tight, it tilts that scapula forward. So normally when I go to lift my arm bone up like this, it's supposed to tilt backwards a little bit and kind of rotate up. So it opens up that ceiling, and then that humerus, that upper arm bone right there, can move freely.
Yeah.
But if somebody has a tight muscle right here that they don't know, and they go to lift their arm up and that shoulder blade doesn't change positions, now this
Oh.
bone butts up into that bone right there all the time.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of tissues around that shoulder, so it can get pretty congested, right? So impingements in the shoulder happen very frequently, but there's a ton of different mechanisms that can kind of be at play there,
Yeah.
right? So there's something called bursa, right, which are like they're usually in between like bony surfaces, and they kind of act as like a lubricant kind of cushioning pad, right?
Yeah.
So those can get inflamed. The tendons that are on like a part of like the rotator cuff muscles, which we'll maybe even talk about those a little bit later, right? Those are 4 muscles that kind of wrap around the upper end of that upper arm bone right there.
Yeah.
They can get stressed and inflamed. There's one that goes directly underneath that little ceiling we talked about and attaches right up here, called the supraspinatus, one of the rotator cuff tendons. I'm sure obviously you talk to people about this all the time, right? But that one can obviously get impinged as well. There could be some pinching going on the like the lower, like deeper surface of the deltoid, that big shoulder cap muscle that's on the outside. There can be a lot of things going on. So if someone's trying to think of like, I just want to make my shoulder feel better before I do my upper body workout, right?
Yeah.
Then if someone was just going to take away something from this as like a protocol, first off, we want to desensitize that area. Okay. So we use massage guns at work.
Yeah.
Now, not every massage gun is created equal, and the little attachments that go onto them are a big deal, right?
Yes.
So I'm always a fan of, there's a triple cushion pad that comes with the brand Hypervolt. They're one of the upper end kind of massage guns that you can get, really, really high quality, good, powerful, but these attachments make a big difference. And if you can use something cushy, you can kind of go over the ligaments and the tendons and the joints and bones and everything, and it feels good. Like it's all okay, right?
Just kind of like warms it up, kind of helps to like regulate the blood flow a little bit in there by just like,
oh, good question. Yeah.
Vibration kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's going to stimulate blood flow into that area big time for sure. But one of the things that it does is it overstimulates the mechanoreceptors. So like the little receptors that are in the tissues that sense like pressure and, stretch and, joint placement and things like that. Right.
Yeah.
If we can calm those down, right? So that rapid vibration with compression is overstimulating some of those signals that are in that area. And when it feels good, there's also something called the gateway theory of pain, right? Where your brain wants to pay attention to whatever's the most important, right?
Yeah.
And so if there's a low level pain response and you do something that feels good over the top of it, it'll pay more attention to the good thing and less attention to the bad thing.
Gotcha.
So that is kind of part of the desensitization as well, right? But there's some other, go ahead.
I apologize. I just, because that's a very interesting, like, subject matter that you're going over right there, because that, I think for like, if I was to think about that kind of just as like a general population person, I almost am curious, like, wouldn't that almost be bad in the sense of where, because if that injury is still there technically, or the pain is still there and you're trying to like, almost like it sounds like you're covering it up almost, but it's still there. It's like, okay, why would I want to try and cover that pain up if it's still there technically? Because then wouldn't you have the risk of also just making it worse?
So it's a really good question. That's why I use the term desensitization, right?
Gotcha.
So a lot of the listeners that have used massage guns before will probably be aware of the fact that it doesn't last very long. You massage gun the area and it feels great. You go about your day, and then like an hour later, you're like, oh my God, it hurts again, right? Or the next day or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea, right? Is that it's a temporary response. Okay. And that temporary response, like I said, if it's an injury and you massage gun over it, it's not going to make it feel better. You're going to feel more pain probably, right? There's an injury there and you're going over the top of it with pressure and stuff, it might make it worse. But if the issue is a sensitivity issue, meaning like something's not operating well and you're getting that alarm bell signal triggered because of that,
gotcha.
And then we desensitize that area, what it does is it opens up your normal movement. So now what would normally feel painful because you're guarded now
Gotcha.
doesn't feel as
Okay.
painful anymore. Now you can move it properly like you want to, right?
Okay.
So the idea is not just like massage gun it and then go do your workout. You know what I mean? So
Nothing's a problem now. It feels
I
great.
don't advise that. Not that people don't do that all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But so if we take the desensitization first, all that's doing is just opening up the possibilities of what we can do next.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yes.
And so then after that, now we want to mobilize the area, meaning there's a couple different like mobilization techniques that we can use, which obviously you know about. There's joint mobilizations, which is like there's like joint capsules that like wrap around like shoulder joint, hip joint, things like that, right? There's a joint capsule and that can get stiff.
Gotcha.
And then there's also like obviously muscles can get stiff as well, right? So then when we think about mobilizing, now hopefully there's a professional that can kind of help you break this down. You can at least talk to ChatGPT or something about it, or whatever AI you're using. But if we can desensitize the area and then we can mobilize the area, now we have normal joint mechanics restored. And then now we're going to try to stabilize the area, right?
Gotcha.
So regaining confidence, like we talked about earlier, and control. And then when you regain that confidence and control, now that joint moves optimally, or at least as optimal as we can get it in that one instance, you know? And then we do something called integration after that, which is usually with my clients, I like to have something called a proxy exercise. So for instance, somebody would be like, my shoulder hurts when I shoulder press. I can chest press, no problem. But when I go overhead, that's when it hurts. That's my proxy. So what I'll have them do when they come into me, right, is I'll be like, go ahead and shoulder press real quick for me. Just do what causes the pain, right? And then they'll go to do it. And they're like, God, see right there. And I'm like, okay, where? Right. And then they'll locate, okay, it's right here, or it's here, or it's whatever, right? So then that helps me as a practitioner be able to kind of hone in on like, oh, okay, this is more likely of what's going on here, right?
Gotcha.
So that proxy exercise also functions as a bookend to what we're about to do. Okay. So I want them to do it in the beginning because I also want them to rate their pain. So in the beginning, when they go to do that normal exercise, right, I figure out where everything's at. I figure out exactly what the sensation is and everything, right? And then when they're holding that position, I'm also like, scale of 1 to 10, where are we at on this pain scale right here, right? Which people have varying opinions of how high on that pain scale they might be, right? I'm like, okay, if 10 is you're on fire. Let's be realistic here. And people do this and like, oh, I'm at a 10. You're not screaming or crying or anything, so I'm wondering if it's really
you still got it up there too. So like, your arm's not falling off.
Judgment. but really though, so and that's another thing too. Actually, real quick, all jokes aside, someone might be experiencing a significant amount of pain, whereas somebody else might not be experiencing that same amount of pain, even though they both have the same issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of different mechanisms at play there. Right. So, I'm talking crap, obviously. Right. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, okay, let's be realistic. Right. But, in somebody's experience.
Very true. It can be a different level.
It could be a completely different level. Exactly. Right.
Whether I feel like whether it's even due to the severity of the injury or not. Like
exactly.
It could just be somebody's pain tolerance level. It could be higher than somebody else's or just.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I mentioned that because if somebody is very sensitive and they're experiencing a high level of pain, that's going to make that person more likely to assume that it's an injury, that it's a deep injury that's happening, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because it's so sensitive, right? So that's just to say that, like, if you don't know where you are on that scale, most people do,
Yes.
But if you don't know where you are on that scale of, more sensitive of an individual or less sensitive of an individual, right? That less sensitive person will be like, it's got this nagging shoulder thing going on. Like, it's no big deal,
Yeah.
The person that's more sensitive is like, everything's broken. I can never use my shoulder again. I'm never going to lift my hand up. You know what I mean? It's like a completely different experience.
Yeah.
And that shapes the rehab process too.
Yeah.
Right? Because that subconscious confidence in the person that's really sensitive is going to be way lower.
That's fair.
You know what I mean?
Because they're just going to be a lot, like you said, a lot more sensitive to just each individual movement, regardless of how minor it is.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, no judgments about where somebody is on that scale, right? You can't help how sensitive you are, you know what I mean? But just something to be aware of, is just like, the level of pain if it's something deep, it's if you fell on your shoulder and you're like, oh my God, my shoulder hurts now, right? You can
Yeah.
probably guess that there's an injury that occurred, right? But if all of a sudden, you're shoulder pressing one day and then all of a sudden it hurts a little bit, then the next day it hurts a little bit more, and then it feels a little bit better, and then a week from now you got to do the same thing again, and now it like really doesn't feel good, right?
Yeah.
There's no way to really know just by guessing yourself if that's an injury that occurred,
Yeah.
or if there's this other issue going on that I was talking about, right? But I'll kind of digress on that one. Sorry. But so the integration movement is the proxy as well. Okay, so going back to that whole proxy thing, I have them bookend our protocol with it, because if they have it at the front end, we do the move and they say it's a 7 out of 10 right now. I'm like, okay, perfect. Let's do all this stuff. And then I'm going to have you do it again at the end. And that's our integration movement, right? Now that we desensitize, we mobilize, we stabilize. Now let's put it all together into an actual movement that you're going to be doing out on the floor.
I love that. It's kind of just like an assessment.
Exactly. Yeah. And then now that they do it again, right? I'm not looking for, is it a 0?
Yeah.
I'm looking for, have you come down a rung or two, right? Because it's a healing.
That's huge. Yeah.
It's huge, right? It's a healing process, right? So I set that
I didn't even think about that. That's a really good kind of like just metric and something to just keep in mind, because I feel like a lot of times, even I'll be honest, like I'm guilty of this as well. Like there's times where I'm like helping like rehab somebody, and their injury, I'm like, okay, it gets better, but they still have pain. I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? And I don't even like think to ask about the fact, okay, has it come like down at all in pain? Is it feel? Sometimes I'll just like forget that, and then other times I'll be like, oh yeah, this is great. Okay, so it's feeling less. I'm like, okay, yeah.
It definitely helps on the practitioner end if you have that kind of scale, you know what I mean? Because like you're either did I pass or did I fail, right? Yeah. So no, yeah. So it's excuse me. Obviously, we want that to come down as many notches as possible for the person, because we don't want them to be in pain anymore, right? Yeah. But a more realistic assessment is, did it come down at all? Yeah. Right. If you were a 7, is it a 6 now? Right. So for instance, I had a lady earlier today, and she's a medical professional and everything, and she was saying that she was having some lateral elbow pain, so outside elbow pain right here, right? And she was talking to, she got some imaging done. They were like, oh, it's a radial tunnel issue, right? So there's like a nerve that comes through the elbow area on the outside right here. And the tunnel that it goes through was a little compressed when they did the EMRI. Right. So they were like, oh, okay, it's a nerve thing, right? And then she went and talked to one of her other colleagues, and they were like, oh, no, it doesn't sound like it at all. You have tennis elbow, right? And so tennis elbow, for everyone that doesn't know, golfer's elbow is on the inside, and we can dive more into that stuff if you want to. I'm sure we will at some point, right? Everyone deals with this at some point. And then tennis elbows on the outside. So if we think about somebody doing a backhand in a tennis swing, when they come out like this, the opposing force is coming back this way. And so what happens is our tendons store elastic energy. So when they go to release that, and it has that opposing force that it meets, and you do that over and over, it starts to pull on that tendon a lot, right? Yeah. And then you can have some low level damage. Sometimes it's in what we call the musculotendinous junction, where like the muscle kind of becomes the tendon, if you will. We can go into anatomy on that too if you want. But so people will get it on the outside, where we have the extensors of the wrist. So my wrist does this motion here. And then the flexors of the wrist are usually on the bottom side right here, or mostly on the bottom side, I should say. And that's called golfer's elbow, because when they go to do their golf swing, they come in and the opposing force is going that way, opposite of the flexors. So the flexor tendon tends to be the one that receives most of that load and therefore gets the damage. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So if we think about it like that, and she was saying, oh, it's tennis elbow right here, or at least I'm being told that, then I was like, okay, perfect. Let's talk about the mechanisms here, right? Yeah. And so then when we went to load it, she was like, okay, if I pick something up, then I feel a lot of pain when I'm in that extended position, right? Got it. And so I was like, okay, so we want to go down the chain, right? So I assessed her shoulder first, make sure there's no instability here, because that can cause, that whole lack of confidence thing down the chain, obviously, right? but she has already had the imaging, right?
Yeah.
So that leads me to believe that it's probably obviously something to do with, that radial tunnel in this area.
Yeah.
And when she described it, she didn't say that it was localized right here like it would be if the tendon was right there, because the muscle becomes the tendon right here.
Mm-hmm.
She said that it went down the entire thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, it's not just tendon. So it doesn't mean you overstress the tendon if you feel it down the entire thing. It goes down the whole thing is the nerves, right? Exactly. So I was like, okay, I'm just right off the bat, when you describe that, it sounds more like it's probably going to be the nerve culprit that they already had established with the MRI, but we'll just keep searching and see what happens, right?
Yeah.
So, excuse me, the protocol that I ended up having her try, which actually ended up making her feel like significantly better. So when we started, she was a 6, and we finished, she was a 2.
Dang.
Which is awesome.
That's really good.
It's really good, right? It's a whole bunch of rounds.
Yeah.
Are you sure you're not a 1?
Yeah. Almost there, really?
Are you sure you're not a 0?
Yeah.
You're pretty close. You look pretty close. Almost.
Just say it for me. Just say it for me. Yeah.
So
don't do that.
Yeah, please. So anyway, so she had the pain going down the whole way, right? So I don't know if you want me to.
No, please.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
No,
cool,
you're
cool.
fine.
Okay,
you're
cool.
fine.
So basically I took the massage gun with the cushy little head on it and everything. And by the way, if you're doing that at home and you don't have the cushy little head, then what I would advise is just put like a cloth, like a folded up, like, hand towel or something like over that area, and then hit it with whatever massage gun you have. Right. But the idea is that a lot of people will be searching for the pain when they use the massage guns or the foam rollers or the whatever, right?
Yeah.
And what pain does is it causes a withdrawal response, right?
Gotcha.
You want to contract. You want to get away from the pain signal, right?
Yeah.
And so some people might have some relief with that. They're like, oh, I kind of lasted through the pain and then I felt it release and then now it feels better, right? But that's not always the mechanism that's at play here, right? So sometimes you do it and then you get done with, you're doing it 5 minutes and you're like, oh, it's so much worse now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a good sign that maybe we shouldn't do that every time.
Something else might be going on.
Yeah, there might be something else going on. Exactly. So because we don't know, at least at this stage, right? And especially if somebody's, just doing this on the street, with no exposure to this stuff, then what I'd say is make it feel good.
Yeah.
Especially because, like I said, it's only a desensitization technique. So we only need it to last while you do your other exercises that follow afterwards, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is if you desensitize the area and you regain your normal movement, and then you can do these rehab kind of things like this, then the rehab stuff gets better and the movement and the joint control and all that stuff gets better. And then that helps move the needle forward quicker.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
There's also something called thixotropy. Have you ever heard of this word? TIA?
No, not at all.
Thix, like TIX is what I meant.
Okay.
So fascia, right? The connective tissues that are all throughout your body and connect every blood vessel and organ and muscle tissue and the skin to the muscle. Like it's literally in between and in and out of everything. It's crazy. It's everywhere. It's like a giant spider web that's just weaved into every part of our body. It's literally the fabric of us, right?
Incredible.
It's crazy, dude. And it's thixotropic. So what that means is when there's exposure, so usually sometimes movement, things like that, right? It goes from viscous, right? This is the ground substances around it, which, I don't know how into the weeds you want to get on this, right? But it becomes more aqueous. It becomes more liquid.
Okay, gotcha.
Right? And then when it stops moving again, it becomes more viscous again. So like synovial joints do that. So joints that need lubricated surfaces. So the knee, the hip, the shoulder, things like that, right? And so that's why people that are, for instance, like arthritic, right? They'll go to move and it feels rusty and nasty and they move it a little bit and it warms up and you're like, oh, okay, now it moves a little more freely. I had to warm it up real quick, right? That warming up process is that gel substance that's in that joint cartilage surface or whatever, that the joint capsule, excuse me.
Okay.
It becomes less viscous and more aqueous.
Gotcha.
So that way it frees up the movement more, right?
So then, follow-up question real quickly then. So what would be, because one thing you mentioned earlier was about like the bursa, which is similar. It's also a fluid-filled sac. What would be the difference there then between like the bursa and the that cartilage?
Yeah, so there's no, as far as I know, there's no obviously there's no synovial fluid in it, right? But I don't think, right, and yeah, I might be wrong about this, right? You know what I mean? But I don't think that the bursa is thixotropic, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
It's a whole different kind of substance, right? And so it's supposed to hold that kind of more solid squishiness, if you will.
Okay.
Right? It's supposed to have that because it provides more of that like cushioning in between the muscle and the bone that's above it, right? So it's usually where it is. That's why it's right above the supraspinatus right here underneath this bone, so that as that muscle moves around, right, it's got this kind of lubricated, squishy little thing in between it and the bone, so it doesn't get hurt, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right. So joint positioning, all that stuff will make a difference, obviously, there, right? And how often you squish it, which is why you can get bursitis and things, right? That thing gets, squished and too mangled too often, and then it becomes inflamed, right?
Yeah.
But no, these things are, with the synovial fluid, we know that when you have a stiff joint, it's supposed to provide friction and cushion and more of the stability, the static stability of the joint, right? And then as it moves around, it becomes, more of a lubrication, and now the joint surfaces can kind of like interact a little bit more and everything, you know what I mean? Which is why it feels like you like warmed it up and now you can move more freely after you do that, right? With the fascia, as far as I know, we don't really know the why it's doing that, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of different theories as to why as of right now, but it's not anything fixed as far as like, man, that's outside. It's everywhere in your body. And the fact that it can do this is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? So it could play. I mean, researchers are thinking that it has a role in your mental state. You know what I mean? Because there's so much feedback coming from it, telling you the state of your body. And because it wraps around blood vessels, talking about the fascia again, of course.
That's wild.
Because it wraps around blood vessels, it can affect like their dilation and constriction and everything, right? So obviously, nitric oxide and all these other chemicals play a role in that and everything, you know what I mean? But the fascia plays a role as well. So because it's such a feedback loop of what's going on in the status of your body, it could affect your mood, because if the status of your body is down or negative, right, then obviously there's going to be a mental component to that as well, right? So that's why people think like, oh, maybe we need to start doing more of this like yoga, stretchy kind of foam rolling, massage, all that kind of stuff. You ever gotten a massage?
Not funny enough, not professionally. No.
Oh, really? Oh, you're missing out, bro.
That's what I've been hearing. I've honestly, I've had so many people tell me that as well recently. I'm like, okay, I need to schedule a time to get that done.
I'm literally a better person because of it. I'm telling you, it's my favorite thing to do ever, man.
Well, you're already a great person. I'm like, okay, I got to do something about it.
It's all the massages, man. I'm telling you.
Life changing.
I was like Scrooge McDuck before that, man. I'm telling you, I'm like brand new now. So anyway, obviously we're kind of getting off to the subject on that one, right? But when we're thinking about this in the context of like rehab and feeling more comfortable in the joints and everything like that, right? Movement is a key factor. And having that desensitization is going to kind of prime that area to feel more warm and lubricated and like ready to go and everything. Same thing will apply to the hips. Same thing will apply to maybe even the ankle, right? And we can get into the difference between like, if you had a hip issue versus a knee issue versus a shoulder issue from like a fundamental level as well, and like how muscles connect and control those joints and everything. But anyway, so if you mobilize that area after you desensitize it and then you stabilize it, so you'll see people doing things like with their shoulders. This is a really big popular one now, the external rotation movement. So external rotations are awesome, and I highly recommend that everyone does them, to some extent at some point of their programming, right? They're very, very good. But what I'll see people do, for the people that are watching, on the, through the camera or whatever right now, they'll just wag the tail like a dog like this, right? And you're not doing what you think you're doing at that point, right? You're moving it. And are the external rotators in the shoulder involved? Yes, absolutely, right? But the whole concept is regaining that confidence in that movement, that subconscious confidence, right?
Yeah.
So the postural muscles are predominantly type 1 muscle fiber types, meaning they're called slow twitch, meaning they respond really well to endurance type exercise, to slow, controlled movements to isometric style movements and everything, right? Like they respond really well to those things.
Yeah.
And we're creating that subconscious confidence as well. So the idea is that as I move slow, my brain and my central nervous system are making a flawless map of exactly what is required to control that movement right there.
Gotcha.
So I pause when I get to the fully contracted position on the outside, and I slowly transition from one part to the other. Okay. So in this case, when I externally rotate, it's rotating towards the outside of my body. Internal rotation would be rotating towards the inside of my body right here. So when I go to do that external rotation, slow, controlled, isometric hold on the outside, maybe 3 to 5 seconds or so, something like that. And then slow control return to the inside again. Okay. So that would be one example of a stability exercise. If you want to look up stability exercise, you can just YouTube, hip stability or shoulder stability exercises or whatever.
Yeah.
Look like you had a question.
No, yeah, totally. So one, I think that's fantastic. I look up a lot of like stability exercises while I also just watch what you're doing. But like one thing that I thought was interesting is with that external rotation, because I have a lot of clients, like typically after we run like their assessments to see kind of what injuries or what portions of their shoulder could be potentially injured. And we notice like, because I think with the external rotations, they're like on the back, they're near that scapula. You have your infraspinatus, and I believe it's your teres minor, right? Yeah. So those are with the external rotation muscles. When you're doing that, I think I remember seeing it on this other like trainer's page. He was doing with a dumbbell. He was doing not the normal, no, so not quite.
Okay.
So I have seen that one as well, but he was doing it where he had like his elbow propped up on a table and he was letting it was like a 50-pound dumbbell. It was insane. He was just kind of like rotate, and he would like he would lean with it so that way it wasn't gonna like snap off, and like he would get it to the base of the table, basically. Like if the table is like my knee, he'd come all the way back and leaning with it, and then focus on trying to like bring it back up top. But like at first I was watching it and I was like, okay, well, first off, that's insane that you would do that. Like, because in my mind, I'm like, those are very small muscles. Like for that teres minor and the infraspinatus, those are not big muscles. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, is he doing something else? But then like I saw in the caption, he was trying to do them. And in my mind, I was like, okay, I mean, in my own opinion, I feel like as long as he was doing them slow and controlled, which he was, that's just kind of impressive, because then that has to be really good for your shoulder, because you're taking it slow and controlled and you're just still going up in weight with a dumbbell. And so I guess my question would be for you then, do you think that is something similar to that resistance band where it is actually still beneficial for kind of building up the shoulder strength, I guess?
Short answer, no.
Okay.
So type 2 muscle fibers respond much more to loading. Not to say that type 1 muscle fibers have no strength or, can't handle loads or whatever, right? But I'd rather you had a weight that you could do 50 reps of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not about the load. The load is actually probably going to shift the bone in the joint, right? Gotcha. So if you have this massive load pulling you backwards like this, right?
Yeah.
The type 2 fibers have to take over, and the primary movers of the shoulder joint have to take over, meaning pec, deltoid, lat, things like that, right? They're the primary movers, and that's what you're after with the heavier loads, right? Which is why we save those type of movements for the shoulder presses and the other things and everything, right? You'd have a lighter load because it's about flawless control and centration in the joint, right?
Gotcha.
So meaning I want to feel like I can optimally stabilize. And when you have too heavy of a load, it takes away that ability to optimally stabilize because there's so much pressure being put in that one direction, right? That's why bands are so beneficial, because you can kind of just dictate, like, you know what I mean? Like as you get more into that contracted position, it becomes harder, right? But if it becomes too hard, you scoot a little bit closer and all of a sudden it's easier, right?
Yeah.
It's not it's going to burn when you do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, especially like when you get a couple reps in, especially with nice slow controlled and then pauses and all that kind
Yeah.
of stuff and everything. Right. But it's not the burn that we're after when we're doing our strength training, like, like burn with like a bench press or
Yeah.
squats or whatever like that. Right. You know what I mean? The idea is that I want to have the brain body connection flawless in that area, not fatigue.
Gotcha.
Fatigue is the antithesis of what we're looking for, right? Fatigue means that I'm losing control.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I'm hitting fatigue as I'm doing bench presses, right? You know what I mean? If you hit ultimate fatigue, which we would call failure, the muscle's just not going to operate anymore. There's a chemical state that prevents it from doing anything after that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you can literally only go so far, and then you're just done after that, right? And so the closer you get to fatigue, the less and less and less and less you're going to be able to control it. So when people are trying to go for really heavy, strong lifts, right? If you're only doing like 3 to 5 reps, you're not going to failure.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to technical failure, where as soon as your technique starts to break down, that's like the end of the set right there, right? You want it to be some level of struggle, right? I mean, obviously it's a heavy weight. You can only do it 3 to 5 times. It's going to be a struggle the whole time, right?
Yeah.
But the idea is that if I'm doing something like, I say, if I'm just going to failure on bicep curls, right? And I can do like, 10 reps with whatever weight I pick, right? As soon as I can't do that weight anymore, right?
Yeah.
The risk is so minimal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so minimal right there, right? But if I could do 10 reps with it, that means like the first 5 reps, flawless technique. Then maybe the next 2 kind of slow down a little bit. And then when I start getting to the end, like your technique's going to be pretty good. But when you go to get to that failure rep, like you're wobbling around, you're starting to lean back a little bit. You know what I mean? Like your body starts shifting, right? Because you're losing the control.
Gotcha.
We don't want to have any semblance of loss of control. We're trying to gain as flawless of control as possible. So one thing that I'll tell my clients whenever we're doing stability exercises is pretend like I'm going to pay you $1,000 for every rep you do flawlessly.
Yeah.
And if you mess up even a single iota of the movement, you don't get the $1,000, right? And it's just an example, obviously. We're going to do that, But if the idea is that you're trying to do this as flawless as possible, that means you have flawless control of that joint. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So load is not the factor at all. Because it's type 1 muscle fiber types, we want endurance. You want lightweight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and so that I actually have a quick follow-up question to that, because I know with the amount of muscles that we have in our body, some of them are kind of made differently. And I know there's also the idea that with certain muscles, you can kind of change the types of fibers that are in them from type 1 to type 2 or vice versa. With smaller muscles like that are meant to be more like stabilizer type of muscles, is that something that can be done? Is it very like the chances of that happening are just so minimal, or like, is there any case where that would be, possible for something where it's such a small muscle like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. So not all of the quote unquote like postural muscles are all type 1. You know what I mean? So there's got to be some level of like reactivity to some of the postural muscles as well. And by the way, the primary movers are mainly the muscles that you see on the outside. Like if you look at yourself in the mirror, and the postural muscles, like quote unquote, right, are the muscles that are surrounding the joint that are deeper. And those are the ones that keep the integrity of our posture together, right? Which is usually why they surround the joints and stuff, right? So those postural muscles are supposed to be very endurant, right? They're supposed to be able to last all day, because hopefully you want your posture to be able to last all day, right? Which is a big deal when it comes to, if I'm thinking about how much of the type 1s are going to shift into type 2s. It's not necessarily about, it's not necessarily what I want with the joints. Do you know what I'm saying? The movement that's created, the primary movement that's created. So for instance, let's use the quad as an example. So one of the primary movements of the quad here, right, is going to be knee extension. Right. So if I go into knee extension here, all the quad muscles pull this way, and they pull up on that lower part of my limb down there, right? And so I want them to just be able to do that. Okay. I want them to be very good at being able to do that. There's going to be a little bit of like, they can kind of tie in and help stabilize the knee a little bit and everything, right? But they're not like, they're mainly just there to make sure that this motion can happen.
Gotcha.
Right. So I want those to be very strong because I want that movement pattern to be very strong.
Yeah.
Right. But the stabilizers are not there to be super strong as far as causing bones to move in certain directions. They're there to be very good at holding the bone against the other bone.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we want them to be endurant. We want them to be small and have a lot of capacity to keep moving and keep doing things and stuff, right? Does that kind of like touch?
Yes, no, that makes a lot of sense, and cool. I appreciate you kind of painting that picture for me.
Sure, yeah, totally.
That makes me curious. Then, kind of, it's like a slight backtrack, I would say, kind of when we were talking about fascia and everything. How does like, let me think about how to word this real quick. What am I saying? I'm curious how like fascia and just like the connective tissue. I guess could you clarify what exactly like connective tissue is as opposed from like tendons and muscles? And then afterwards, I'm curious how fascia and that connective tissue all play a role in both like what happens to those when injuries occur, as well as what happens to them when you're recovering from an injury. I don't know if that was a lot.
No. So connective tissues are tissues that, just as the name implies, like connect aspects of our body together.
Gotcha.
Right?
So still kind of like muscle and tendons. That's just connected to the bone, basically.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay. So connective tissues, most people know about, tendons and ligaments and stuff, right? Like people know like ACL tears and everything, right? It's anterior cruciate ligament, right? So ligaments hold bone to bone, right? And then tendons connect muscle to bone, right? Which obviously these things, right? But the tendon is technically fascia, right?
Okay.
So the idea with this is there's something, so every muscle fiber individually has a sheath wrapped around it. And then every grouping of those muscle fibers has a sheath wrapped around it as well. Mm-hmm. And then every bundle of those groupings has a sheath wrapped around it as well. And then every bigger group of muscles has of those bundles, right, has a sheath wrapped around that, right? So it's just these progressive layers of, thicker and thicker bands of things, right?
Yeah.
So the tendon is just the muscle ends, and it's a continuation of those things that are wrapping around those fibers.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so that is why that muscle comes down and connects to the bone like that, right? It's a continuation of what was already there around the muscles, right? So it's not a separate thing. Mm-hmm. That just continues on and connects. Okay. And then ligaments, which is mainly like, collagen and like more densely structured fibers like that, right? Then ligaments are just going to connect the bone to the bone. Now there's a little bit of elasticity in there, and you can gain elasticity in ligaments and tendons and everything. That's how people get so mobile, where they can do splits and like things like that, especially if they couldn't before, right? Yeah. That's tendons and ligaments loosening up along with the muscle fibers as well, right? But so with the fascia is kind of like a generic term. And I think as the years progress, we're going to start to kind of like delineate between like multiple different types of fascia. Right? Yeah. Because like I said, blood vessels have fascia, right? Organs have fascia that wrap around them, right? The muscle is connected to the skin by fascia.
Gotcha.
Right? Like,
okay. So it really is just interwoven into everything.
Interwoven into everything, literally. So the idea is literally connective tissue, right? Like it is tissues that connect all the different aspects of the body together, which is why surgeons and researchers and people that were doing all the stuff on this from a long time ago used to just cut through all that stuff because they just thought it was just what was holding everything in place. And they're like, no, I'm trying to study the muscle, not all this weird stuff here. That was the thing that they were after in a lot of cases, though. You know what I mean? So
that's rough.
Yeah, totally. Right. But, we don't know. We figure these things out as we go. But so anyway, so when we're thinking about it in that sense, that's also why I take such an integrative approach to health with people, right? And we call it like the hybrid training approach. So I don't care if you want to get bulky and huge. I don't care if you just want to be strong. You don't care about your muscle size. I don't care if you want to be mobile and flexible. I don't care if you want to be an endurance runner or whatever you want to do. there is not one system in your body that doesn't affect all the other systems in your body. It is literally one unit.
Yeah.
So there's this concept of something called the deep health model, right?
Okay.
And the deep health model, the idea is that you're managing how you're interacting with your outside environment. What's your connectivity with your spouse and your friends, and what's your connectivity with yourself, your internal environment, right? And your awareness of that.
Yeah.
What are you using for fuel? Obviously, right? And that's a real big one nowadays, man. 70% of the population's obese at this point, right?
Yeah,
It's like fuel's obviously a big one. What are you doing for movement? Because when I listed all those people right there, all those avatars, they're all doing completely different workout styles and everything, right? But it's all movement, obviously, at the end of the day, right? So if you think about all these different systems and how they tie in, there's something called allostatic load. Were you there when we were talking about this at the meeting?
I was not, okay. No, unfortunately.
Okay, so allostasis is the concept that your body is essentially a bucket, and every stressor in your life is a rock, and you keep filling that bucket with these rocks, right? And eventually you're going to reach capacity in that bucket, right? So everything you do that helps you relax or feel better or have fun or whatever, right? You know what I mean? Like that helps you decompress is something that takes one of those stressors out of that bucket. And there's a very simplified version of this, obviously, right? You know what I mean? But this is a, easy to digest version, right?
For sure.
So anyway, for instance, the stretching and mobility work, right? That's a way of taking the stressor of the workout. This gets confused very often, right? The workout is what people think is building the muscle, but that's the stress response that you're causing on the body that then causes the adaptation if you get the recovery, right?
Yes.
So somebody that's training every single day and only has the input of breakdown and damage and stress, right? But never has the recovery, right? They're only giving their body the input of breakdown and stress, right?
Yeah.
So that can be a big issue, right? Same thing. Maybe you're doing everything right in the gym and you're eating really well, but your job sucks, or you hate your home life, or there's some other kind of
you're
not sleeping well.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? There could be some other big stressor, and that's impeding your results from the other stuff, even though you think it has nothing to do with it, right?
Yeah.
So the idea is that no one aspect of your wellness and like overall health is more important than another, because they're all tied in. They're all one thing.
Yeah.
Right. So not to say you need to nail everything and get it all perfect, right? But if you just think about breaking things down in the sense of like, how am I managing my internal environment? How am I managing my external environment, right? And how am I managing those stressors, even if they don't seem related, right? You would think that like, okay, I work on tightening my muscles up at the gym, and then I work on stretching and loosening up my muscles when I get done, and that's the other side of the coin, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have the stress, and then you have the relaxation, and then boom, that's all you need to do, right?
Yeah.
But if you're not sleeping well, right, or if you go to work and your boss sucks, right, and your cortisol is up all freaking day long, right? Cortisol by itself is not the demon it's made out to be, right? It's there as a stimulant, right? So it releases glucose into the bloodstream, right? And it's there to mobilize you to be like, hey, there's an issue, let's navigate how to survive this issue, right? And so the issue is that when you're running away from a threat, right, hopefully eventually you escape that threat, and then now you can go back to relaxing again, right? But if that threat is your job and you have to go every single day, right, then you're never escaping that threat, and it's constantly there. Now you have elevated glucose levels in your blood all the time, right? And that is a cause of inflammation in the body, right? So then I'm doing my workout and I do my stretch after I get done, but that hasn't managed my overall nasty inflammatory response I have going on. So I might be more likely to get injured, even though I think I'm doing everything right. You know what I mean? Because that inflammatory response is ramped up. So not to say that this is the only thing, but this is just an idea of how all this stuff kind of ties in together, right? And you think like, oh, the stressor at the job has nothing to do with how I'm working out and everything. That's how I de-stress, is go and do my workout, right? But it's all affecting and it's still impeding your results, right? So it's just to say that like, obviously we kind of got off of the pain management side of things here, right? But it is all one.
Kind of goes in.
Yeah, exactly, right? It is all one thing that we're after. So if you have things that de-stress you, right? If you don't, get them. If you do, right, then all of those things can take some rock out of that bucket, right?
Yeah.
So the more things you accumulate that are de-stressors, right, the more of those rocks you can take out of that bucket, and the better the results are going to be in all those other categories.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, that is very fascinating. And I love the example that you gave of how, like, even though, sorry, I love the example that you gave about like your gym life compared to like your home life as well, where it's like, cool, if your job sucks, even though you're using the gym as a de-stressor, it's still putting stress on the body. I think that is such a big thing, because that is one thing that I have had to talk to some of my clients about, who are just like, they're coming in, 5, 6 days a week, and they love coming in and they're doing great. But at the same time, they're not seeing like the progress as quickly as they would like. And having to kind of have that conversation with them of like, look, I get that you love coming in. I'm glad for that. Let's change up your routine in some way, so that way we can help get you to recover and de-stress. And so like we have to implement a lot more like steady state cardio, something at a very low zone, just to at least help their body, release a little bit of the, just help them come down a little bit off of having that stressful life and then also being in the gym. And so just kind of, I guess, finding ways to help them manage, because they obviously can't just quit the job right away. And so don't recommend that. But I also have talked to a couple of people like, cool, like this job is clearly stressful for you, and like talk to them and help them try and figure out, okay, is there any other route you can go? Like what would be like a long-term goal for you? And just try and help, I guess, like be a listening ear for them. So that way, even when they're at the gym, they are able to de-stress from doing work and talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
And so and that's one thing that I've noticed has helped out as well.
Oh, heck yeah, man. Well, and even, that person has the stressful job and they come to the gym and they do yoga.
Yeah.
Right? There's deep breathing, there's
Yeah.
stretching and mobility,
Yep.
there's joint positioning and control, right? So you're increasing that brain body connection. There's meditation involved with it, right?
Yeah.
Like that is a very powerful tool. And that's a lot of de-stressors all in one little thing right there, right?
Yeah.
So not to say I want to discourage people and be like, oh, going to the gym and then stretching when you get done isn't enough if your job sucks, right? You know what I mean? It's like, no, it is. It's just that you have to think of it, everything as far as like amounts, right?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
How stressful is it? And how many of these de-stressors do I have to combat how stressful this thing is? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Cool.
So one question that I had, one thing you mentioned earlier was about like joint mobilization.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of curious on your take. Let's say somebody, like for their hips specifically in this case, let's say somebody's hips are pretty tight. What would you say, like how would somebody be able to determine whether the tightness is due to just, inflexibility and that's what's causing them to be so tight, or like tightened joints, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Are those, could somebody consider those two separate things, or are they usually just in conjunction?
Yeah, no, they could be two separate things for sure. Yeah. So the joint capsule can get pretty stiff on people,
Mhm.
like I said before, the synovial fluid changes its consistency, so if somebody has a sedentary job and they're just sitting all day, right, that becomes very stiff within that joint capsule, and the actual capsule itself can get stiff, as well as having that stiffness because that synovial fluid being more viscous all the time.
Yeah.
And so if you feel a pain that's like you can't localize it, like you can't be like it's here or it's on this side or whatever, you're like, it's just deep in there, right?
Yeah.
That's usually a sign that it might be the joint capsule itself. So that usually tends to happen with the shoulder and the hip the most, at least in my experience,
Yeah.
So if that's the case, if you're like, I can't like point to you where it is, it just feels like it's deep in there, then that is a sign for me that I would like to probably mobilize that joint first, right?
Yeah.
So with all the muscles being tight, we can check them all, right? Mm-hmm. So you just do whatever the opposing thing is of what that muscle's supposed to do, basically, right? So it's in the name for hip flexors, right?
Gotcha.
Flexing is the closing of a gap between two joints, right? And extending is the opening of that gap, essentially, right? Yeah. And so if I have a hip flexor, it's closing the gap here.
Yes.
And so therefore stretching it is extending the hip back behind me.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
So the test for that one would just be seeing how much extension you can get on your hip.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing. My muscles on the inside of my hip are there to tighten up and pull my legs inward, right? So then opening up the legs to the outside is going to be a good way to check and see how stiff those muscles might be, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you can go online, you can look all these up and everything. We don't obviously have the whole, we're not going to do the whole test right now and everything. So somebody's gonna have to YouTube this eventually, right?
Yeah.
But if it comes to your shoulder and your hip, you're looking for internal and external rotation quite a bit, right? You're also looking for in the hip flexion and extension, like we said, right? You're looking for something called abduction, abduction, and adduction, adduction, right? So adduction is adding to the center line of the body. Abduction is making those limbs absent from the center line of the body, if that's an efficient way to think about it,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a very dumb way of thinking about it. For me, because I always got those things mixed up all the time. I was like, okay, I got to figure out which one is which. And now that like I think about it more and more, it doesn't make like a ton of sense, but it was just for some reason it stuck, and that's the only way I remember it now. So for me, abduction, I just always think of like, okay, you have your abs in the front. Abduction is what hits your glutes. Those are away from the abs. So that's how I remember it. Abduction is like always the legs kind of opening up. They're, going outwards to activate the glutes a little bit. Adduction is the exact opposite. So it's going in. Got it. Okay. It was.
There's always something that helps remember, you know what I mean?
I'm not sure like how my brain got there, but I was like, I need to figure out like a way. And it was just the idea that it was like the opposite. I was like, okay, great. We'll stick with this.
I ain't mad at you. That's hilarious, man. I'm sure there's all kinds of those little things like that. We come up with all these acronyms and stuff too. It's really funny. So if we're going to go back to the anatomy side of things here, if we're thinking about the most common culprit joints, let's go to the shoulder first, then we'll go to the hip, and then we'll go to the back, because I think once we get to the back, we'll kind of sit on the back stuff for a little while.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the shoulder, the scapular motion, the motion of the shoulder blade, is going to really dictate how what we call the glenohumeral joint is moving. Right?
Yeah.
So there's a little ball, or a little socket, that's on the inside of the scapula right here, called the glenoid fossa. And then when this humerus moves around, that's called the glenohumeral joint right there. When the humerus moves around, it needs the shoulder blade to move around in order for it to have open, controlled movement through all of its ranges of motion. Right. So if somebody's looking at this right now in the on the camera here, this is the scapula. This is the spine of the scapula right here. And then this is called the acromion that sits up on top right here. There's another little bony prominence here called the coracoid process, which is another little thing that kind of sticks out. It's just a weird looking bone, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool though. And then the humerus is the upper arm bone right here. Okay.
Yeah.
So in order for my humerus to be able to move around properly, like I said before, right, there's the primary movers on the outside right here. So pecs kind of pull the arm forward here. The deltoids help pull the arm up and out and back. And the lats help pull the arm back a lot and like down, right? So if you're thinking about the arms being up overhead, they're going to pull the arms down towards the torso. If you're thinking about like doing like a row, then they're going to pull the arms backwards towards the torso, right? So with all those motions of the primary movers here, what the rotator cuff muscles do, there's 4 of them. One is on top. So as the arm moves up, that one controls that motion primarily, right?
Gotcha.
They all work together. But the external rotators are going to be on the back right here. And those are the ones we were talking about earlier, right? The infraspinatus is inferior to the spine underneath it, right? And the teres minor is going to be right underneath that one right there. There's also the teres major, but it doesn't quite make the rotator cuff fold, right? And then the supraspinatus, superior to the spine of the scapula, is going to be right up top here on this groove. And so when those external rotators move, they bring that bone away to the outside of the body.
Gotcha. When
the elevator moves up here, the supraspinatus, that raises up the arm, right? And then there's another one back here called the subscapularis, and it's underneath the scapula. So I think submarine underneath, right? So subscapularis, that's going to help to bring the arm bone inward like this, called internal rotation, internally rotating towards the inside.
Gotcha.
Okay. So because we have all 4 of those motions right there, we want that muscle to be, or those muscles, to be as efficient at centrating the joint as possible. They're just there to make sure that that humerus stays right up clean up against that glenoid fossa that we talked about. And then as the arm bone moves around, because the primary movers are moving it, right?
Yeah.
Then we want that to be nice and snug in the joint. And so there's a couple of different reasons why that can get messed up, right?
Okay.
There could be a damage to those muscles. There could be a lack of neural drive to that area, right? Which is like the brain sending the electrical signal to do something, right?
Yeah.
That can be diminished for a couple different reasons and everything, right? But so when we say stability of the joint, we're talking primarily about those muscles being involved, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
So then the same thing with the hip as well, right? We have the adductors, the muscles that are on the inside of the groin and thigh right here. There's a few of them. So this upper leg bone right here is called the femur. This little bony prominence that's on the outside is called the greater trochanter.
Yeah.
And then this little joint, that ball or the socket that this ball sits in right here is called the acetabulum.
Okay.
So there's like a capsule that wraps around the outside right here. And so there are the muscles that pull the bone onto the inside. There's the muscles that externally rotate. So rotate more towards the back side of your body, like we talked about with the one up there, right?
Yeah.
There's also muscles that are called abductors. So abduction, remember we said was absent from the center line of the body. So they raise the leg up to the outside there, right? And then there's extensors, there's muscles. Literally every movement that you can do in your body, there's a muscle that is there to pull the bone in that direction.
Yeah.
Right? So I tell people when they're doing their mobility stuff and they're stretching and everything, right? It's not necessarily about just getting into the stretch position, hanging out there, right? Move around a little bit, kind of play around with the directions and stuff and kind of play around like, okay, figure out where the sweet spots are.
Gotcha.
Because something moves everything in every direction that you're possibly able to move in, right? So if you do your mobility work and your stretches and you really explore all these ranges and positions and everything, right, you're going to get to all those things that you're not even aware exist probably. You know what I mean? You're going to be hitting muscles that are not getting stretched all the time, right? So if you find the big opportunity when you're doing your mobility stuff, hang out in that position because it's probably a muscle that's been a little neglected.
Yeah.
So anyway, that kind of breaks down the stabilizers of the hip there. So there's also a ton of muscles that are postural muscles that keep our spine erect. Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's the feeder, you know.
Yeah. So especially in the lower back, it can be a tricky beast because the pelvic alignment, right? So the positioning of these bones in the pelvis right here are a big deal, right? Yeah. So the first thing I'll ask somebody when they say they have lower back pain, right, is can you point to it? So if you're trying to establish this on yourself, because sometimes people have glute issues and they think that it's a lower back issue because if you just kind of pointed to a general region, it's the lower part of your back, right? But if you kind of feel like you like touch on the back, you can touch the upper end of your hip bone. So the first thing I'll do with people is be like, hey, if you feel where that bone sticks out on you, where the pain is it above that bone or is it below that bone, right? Because if it's below that bone, it tells me that there's something to do with the glute going on here, right? Now, can it be referred pain? There's something called referred pain where there's pain somewhere else in the body, but you feel it in another location, right? Yeah. Absolutely, that could be the culprit for sure. Totally, right? But in a lot of cases, when somebody points to like a glute area and they oh dang, it's right here, right? You can see all these little cords coming out of the spine right here, right? This is like an extended part of like obviously all the spinal nerves and everything that all kind of branch out and come down here, and they all end up converging down here and they make something called the sciatic nerve.
Gotcha.
Most people know what the heck the sciatic nerve is at this point in their time, right? Mostly, I'd guess 90% of people have had some exposure to some kind of sciatic symptom, right?
Thing that just shoots down their glute all the way down the leg.
And it just goes down the leg. Yep, exactly. So even if you have something right here, it could be a spine thing that you're dealing with that's leading to glute pain, right? You know, but you see a practitioner and obviously we can help you kind of diagnose what's going on and kind of figure out more directly, you know. But so if somebody had a back injury at some point, then obviously we can start there. And we're like, okay, was there damage to the discs, right? The discs are there to kind of like, these are facet joints that are on the back side of the spine right here, right? And each one of these little sections is called the vertebrae or vertebrae, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the little cushy pad that's in between them, there's a big, thick, like collagen, kind of like a bunch of rings that kind of like build out, like almost like a tree trunk, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like a little gel like surface that's in the middle of that, right? And so those are all it's like a lubrication thing almost, right? You know what I mean? It kind of keeps that like squishiness in the middle, while the collagen fibers that are in the rings on the outside also keep that cushioning in between the discs and avoid too much compression and everything. And there's a process called delamination where over time with improper loading and everything, right, we can start to wear down those rings. And once we get to that inner layer, then that little gel that's on the inside starts to stick out. If it sticks out a little bit, it's called a bulge. If it sticks out a lot of it, it's called a hernia, right? Or a herniation, excuse me. Yeah.
A little bit of a difference.
Yeah. Same concept though, right?
Yes.
So it's called a herniation, right? And you can kind of see it on my guy, little Billy Bones right here, this little red thing that's sticking out right there. That is a disc bulge right there. And so it is sticking out and it is touching on this nerve. So this guy's probably got some pretty significant lower back pain going on, right? So
been through a lot.
Yeah, he's been through a lot. You don't even know. So if we have something that's kind of pressing on one of those nerves that's coming out of this lower end of the back here, right, then you're going to be experiencing some pain, right? But it's not necessarily debilitating at this point, right? You get that herniation, really compresses that nerve. Like you're going to like cut off your ability to use that area of your body, right? That's when like, if you've ever like been working out, you kind of tweak your back and you're like, oh my God, oh no. And it kind of lasts for a few days and stuff, right? That's kind of more of like that symptom, right? Or a few weeks or whatever, you know what I mean? When you have the herniation, that's when you're doing your lift and you're like, oh my God. And then you're stuck forward. Like I can't even stand up straight right now. You know what I mean? It's like severely limiting your mobility and movement and everything, you know? That's more like the herniation kind of style.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So anyway, so when we're thinking about stability of the spine, there is a ridiculous amount of musculature around the core area of the body for a lot of different, evolutionary reasons and stuff, right? But when we think about being able to have limited back pain, there's going to be a stability mechanism at play, just like before, right? And there's going to be a mobility mechanism at play as well. Okay. So the mobility is going to be usually coming from muscles that like attach like the rib cage to the pelvis, or that shape the like where the position of the this hip bone is right here, called the ilium, right? That hip position can scoot forward a little bit, right? And it can scoot backwards a little bit. So when it scoots backwards a little bit, you kind of get like this like arch in your back. Like if you picture your hips are a bowl of water, if you dump that water out in front of you, or dump that bowl out in front of you, that's called an anterior pelvic tilt. You're tilting towards the front side, the anterior portion of your body. And if it tilts backwards, that's the posterior pelvic tilt towards the back side of your body, right? So that would be like if you kind of like rounded your lower back, right? Like if you're trying to stand like you were like using a walker or something, right? You know? And then if you kind of like, accentuated your butt, like really stick your butt out and arch your lower back, that would be more of the anterior position, right? And so some people just stand like that, right? And so if you're standing like that, that's going to put all kinds of different pressure in weird places and stuff, right? So some of what we need to do as practitioners is figure out, okay, what musculature is off that's pulling the pelvis in these weird directions, right? So we'll need to mobilize that so that the pelvis can be centralized better. And then if that's the case, then we can get those muscles loosened up. And then we need to also strengthen the stabilizing muscles of the spine, right? So back exercises are important for that, obviously, and, muscles that, really help to kind of like hit the backside of the body. Core exercises are important for that and everything as well, right? But when people think core exercises, they think crunch. You're one of them. I knew it, Siri. So
just listening in this whole time.
She always is.
That's great.
Leave me alone. But so we want to make sure that the alignment of the pelvis and of the scapula, because if the shoulder blades are all forward hunched like this, right, that's going to change the shape of that thoracic, like rib cage portion of your spine, right? So to make sure, okay, is it stemming from up here, right? Is there something I need to do to correct your shoulder blade position? Is it stemming from down here? Is there something I need to do to fix the hip position, right?
Yeah.
There's a bunch of those things that can kind of be thrown off, right? So a qualified practitioner can go through and assess all these different portions of the spine right here, right? And if you want to break down the anatomy of the spine real fast, we have the cervical spine is the neck portion, right? So basically from like the base of the skull all the way down to like the first rib muscle or first rib bone that's up here.
Gotcha.
So if somebody's watching on the camera, it's like right about up here, like just above the shoulder, where like if you're feeling it on your body, it'd be like right about where your trap is, right? And then that thoracic portion of your spine goes all the way down to the base of the rib cage down here. And so there's 12 vertebrae right there. There's 7 vertebrae in the cervical spine up here, and then there's 5 vertebrae in the lumbar spine down here. Now the spine does continue. There's the sacrum and there's the coccyx. The coccyx is like this little like tail, right? We literally call that the tailbone, right? Yeah. And the sacrum, some people have issues in their SI joint, right?
Yes.
So iliosacral joint, right? So the sacrum is this bottom end of the spine, and then the ilium again is this like Dumbo ear kind of hip bone that's out here, right?
Yeah.
I always think ilium is William the elephant, right? So if you look at the pelvis straight on, it's got the Dumbo ears. So I'm like, William the elephant is the ilium, you know what I mean? So we all have our different things, you know? So anyway, so this bottom end of the spine right here is separated when you're at birth, right? But then it ends up fusing all of these together, right? But that lower innervation down here of the spine that comes out and makes that sciatic nerve and all the other innervation that goes into the glutes and all that kind of stuff, whatever, comes out of that sacral area and that lumbar area right here as well, right? Which is why all these little guys are sticking out like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's why it's usually when people have some kind of compression of a disc down here in the lower end of their spine, either in the lumbar or that sacroiliac kind of joint area right there, right? It affects a lot of the lower limb. It's the glutes, it's the pelvis, and like, you know, muscles that are down in the groin area. It goes down the backside of the leg, like all that kind of stuff, right? They're all kind of like interconnected here. And that's where all that nerve supply comes from.
Yeah.
So anyway, so just like all the other joints in the body, even though these are kind of stacked up and they look really different, they don't look as mobile as those other joints, they still need stability, right? And so the exercises that are associated with that, like there's tons of them, right? But in more cases, it's not necessarily flexing and extending the spine like you would normally think of, like crunches and things that work out your abs.
Yeah.
We're talking about the deeper muscles that are supposed to keep the integrity of the joints of the spine together. And so those exercises, those exercises are going to be things like a bird dog.
Gotcha.
Right. Some people have seen this if they've ever done yoga, or like, you know, this is a popular one online now and everything, you know, where like you're on all fours. So you're on your hands and knees. And if you extend your left hand out straight in front of you and kind of make a straight line, and you extend your right leg out behind you and then hold that position, it's that stabilizing of the spine, because you're very stable when you had your 4 pegs down, right? But then you remove 2 of them, and now you're trying to stabilize because now I've got that lack of balance on each side, like we call contralaterally, right? And now I have to have the upper limb of my right hand and the lower limb of my left leg do all the stabilizing across the body, right?
Yeah.
So that's a super good core stability exercise, but there's a ton of them, obviously.
Definitely.
So, but I've been talking a lot, I feel like.
No. I think you've been talking the perfect amount.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
You're providing lots of amazing information. I'm just absorbing all of it. And I'm looking forward to going back through and rewatching all this as well. Yeah, and there's a lot to go over. I mean, this is a very big topic that we're talking about as well. I mean, we're talking about multiple different joints in the human body. We're going over anatomy. I mean, that's a big topic.
Oh, yeah.
We could probably go on for a whole lot longer.
Yes, we most certainly could. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I also know that your wife is definitely waiting for you for dinner, so I won't take up too much of your time. I really do appreciate everything that you have kind of talked about today, and bringing in this guy here. You know, despite everything he's been through, he's holding up strong.
Mr. Billy. Oh yeah, thank you. Are there any other like pain things or like things you've dealt with clients or anything like that you want to kind of like dive into or like have questions on, or do you get questions from anybody about certain things?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't want to take up too much time.
That's okay.
But what I would say is I think some of like the bigger things that I've had from like clients is I guess there are two main things. One of which is a low back type of pain, and it tends to be very low, like almost near like the sacroiliac joint.
Okay.
But it isn't. It's not any radiating. Like I've had a couple clients where for some reason it was like just they would point to like right around this area, and it was just like in this single spot, and it was just like a little bit of pain. Like it wasn't excruciating. Like they were like, yeah, it's like a two maybe. So it's very light, but it's just something that they can kind of are like constantly aware of. And I've done like a lot of different assessments for them, and like we've gotten it because it used to be a lot bigger. It used to be like just their entire low back was in pain and everything. But between the amount of just mobility work that we've done, strengthening, stabilizing, it had basically like all gone away. But for some reason, there was just like that single spot there that they were still like just feeling a tiny bit of pain. And I haven't been able to exactly figure out how to make that go away, or if it could be potentially just arthritis as well. So there's that one, and then I would say just a shoulder pain in what I have assumed is their internal rotation. Oddly enough, normally I deal with a lot more external rotation, but I have a couple of clients where their internal they kind of messed up a little bit doing certain movements, and so I've had them rehabbing it for a while, and love them to death, and they'll think it's funny if they get to listen to this one. But they have not. They were really good about doing their routines to help take care of the shoulder for like the first few months. And as pain was starting to minimize, they just wanted to get back into working out, and so they would have since become more relaxed on their routines.
I know how that goes.
And so part of me is like, okay, I get that they've become relaxed, but like they can do basically any exercise. It's literally just like the extreme stretch, like when they're really yanking it, that it hurts. And so part of me is like, okay, like they're fine, but also in their kind of rehabilitation routines, range of motion, I think, is something that is huge that I don't think I have harped on enough. So I feel like when you are doing like those external rotations and you can get to the point where it's like, cool, like you've reached a good spot, like maybe you're doing it and you can get to like close to 90 degrees, but you're not quite there. That's one of those where it's like, yeah, like you can do most exercises if you're able to get there and there's no pain. But that last little 10 degrees is still going to leave your shoulder very vulnerable. And so I think that's what I need to, like, I guess, bring up to them. And I would love to hear your kind of opinion on like that last 10 degrees. Like, is that very crucial, or do you think they'd probably be fine?
So there's a separate point that you just reminded me of that I kind of wanted to bring up that kind of ties into this as well, right? Is there's this really big emphasis on the stretch now in hypertrophy work when people are trying to do muscle building exercises and everything, right? And working through an entire range of motion is important for muscle building for sure. Absolutely, 100%, right? But this whole concept of getting as stretched out as possible while you're under a really significant amount of load, I'm not a massive fan of, because there are different levels of mobility for people. People can be hypermobile. Like, for instance, I'm a hypermobile person, right? There's still stretching and flexibility stuff I'm working on and trying to do and everything, right? You know what I mean? But like, I just have a tendency to have a little more laxity in my joints, right? And so if I'm going into like the deepest stretch possible, that's completely different for me compared to the dude who's 250 pounds right next to me. You know what I mean? Like my mobility versus his, right? And how deep of a stretch I can get out of an exercise versus him, right? And the way we feel about the control of that is going to be very different, right? So there are some normative ranges for certain muscle groups and joints and everything in the body, right? Where we're like, okay, if you can't get into this degree of range, right? You're familiar with the goniometric assessments and stuff, right?
Like, yes, I would say I'm a little rusty. I have heard of them. I have dealt with them before, but it has been a bit, so I'm not like brushed up on it.
It's just measuring joint motion and like the degrees of like flexion, extension, external rotation, things like that, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So there are normative ranges. There's a whole school of thought bases off of it with this goniometry, obviously, but um, with that, it's does the joint move enough to where a lack of mobility won't get you injured? I'm saying that kind of weird, right? So is the joint mobile enough to where you can do all the exercises you're asking your body to do?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we want to have this normative range set because the day-to-day tasks that are involved with this joint require this much mobility. So we want you to be able to access that much mobility, or the exercises you're doing require this much mobility. So we want you to be able to access that much mobility. Right.
Yeah.
So outside of that, if you're trying to like do the splits like I am and everything, right? Like the middle splits.
Yeah.
I'm like right there, by the way.
Yeah. You've been working on it.
I've been working on it.
So close.
I'm so close. But anyway, that's cool, right?
Yeah.
It's cool. It looks cool, right? I mean, do I have to be able to do the middle splits? Like there's no reason why I have to be able to do the middle splits other than just it's cool, right?
Cool.
You know what I mean? Like I love
pretty
that,
cool.
right? Exactly. Is there any kind of advantage? You know what I mean? Maybe if I'm trying to, kick somebody in the head or something, you know what I mean? But like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it depends, right? But so outside of this goniometric assessment process, right, where we're like, okay, your day-to-day stuff that you're most likely to do is going to require this much joint motion, right?
Yeah.
Outside of that, then it's a breakdown of like, okay, is there something else you're doing in your day-to-day life? Are you exercising in a certain way that requires that you have more range of motion than the typical like average amount, right?
Gotcha.
So in those cases, right, I would start with the goniometric assessment on your side of things as a practitioner, obviously, right? I'd start with the goniometric assessment, see, am I in these normative ranges or is my client in these normative ranges, right? And then outside of that, do they require more mobility because of something else that they're doing? Like, for instance, like a pitcher has to have a ridiculous amount of external rotation to really get a good whip on the ball when they go to throw it, right?
Okay.
Supraspinatus tear is a pitcher's tear, by the way. It's called the pitcher's injury, right? You know what I mean? Because they elevate the arm and then they rotate it backwards, right? And so you're up against that acromial ceiling that we talked about earlier, right? So if they don't have adequate control, or they open up the chest as they go to turn back and open up that ceiling of the acromion, if they have poor control and then come back like this, right? Now you're buttoning up the muscles in there and everything, and now you're going to fray that surface and everything, and then you're going to start to break down. You're going to tear that muscle or the tendon or whatever eventually, right? So anyway, it depends, obviously, in that one right there. So you were talking about external rotation. Is there a certain amount of external rotation that the requires? Was that the question? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean external and internal, basically. Like if that lasts like 10 degrees, really get like, and I would say 10 degrees for like the average person. Like they are not hypermobile by any means.
Yeah.
So would that like last 10 degrees really make a huge difference and keep their shoulder at risk for injury?
Yeah. So if you're doing a mobility assessment with this person and you're kind of going around and you see like the pec has good range, the delt has good range, the lat has good range, right? I mean, like all these things don't seem restricted. And then you're going through and you're doing really good controlled external and internal rotations. And then you assess if you like bring their arm up like this, right? Or if you have them lay down on a table, and then you just see how far, or against the wall even, right? And you just see, okay, how close to that wall can they get? So for instance, like if you are standing up against the wall and you do kind of like this goalpost thing with your hands where you make these right angles with your elbows and you push your elbows up against the wall. Ideally, if your shoulders and your butt and your heels of your feet are all up against the wall, and your elbows are against the wall, in a perfect world scenario, I should be able to put pressure from the back of my knuckles up against the wall as well, right? That would be a good amount of external rotation for somebody, right?
Okay.
If you can get past that, obviously, like I said, I'm hypermobile, so I can get way the heck past that, right? That's cool, right? But if you can at least put pressure into the wall through your hands, that's a good assessment for external rotation right there. And the same thing when you go to get into internal rotation, it doesn't have to touch the wall by any means on this one, right? But we want it to be roughly about a 30-degree angle between your palm of your hand and the wall while you're in that exact same position again, right?
Okay.
And so if the internal rotation is limited 30, 40 degrees, like within that ballpark, right? But if your hands are within that kind of range right there, then you're cool, right?
Yeah.
If they're very limited on how low they can go down, then you're going to want to stretch that out, right? And see what the external rotators are limiting your internal rotation, right? Because those are the ones being stretched because the opposing movement.
Yeah.
Same thing. This is for the listeners, right? Same thing when you go to externally rotate. If that's limited, your internal rotator is the thing that's limited because you're doing the opposing motion, right?
Yeah.
So people that do a lot of heavy pressing, because the pressing is going to involve really stable internal rotation control, right?
Yeah.
They tend to get pretty stiff internal rotators, right? Because they're always in this forward kind of controlled motion right here. There tends to be some internal rotation and a lot of demand on the internal rotator when you get into that position there. So that can be one as well, right? So you're going to want to stretch out that internal rotator, usually that subscapularis that we talked about earlier, but there's other things involved. But so that's the way that you would assess that. So if you're curious, if you're just watching this at home and you're like, well, I don't know what my normative ranges are and everything, it's a quick Google search, obviously, right?
Yeah.
There's tons of videos from rehab specialists and everything online as well on YouTube and everything.
Do you have like any recommendations that people could?
Oh my goodness! Absolutely,
like 1 or 2 of your top,
dude. Dr. Aaron Horschig. If you ever see this, I love you. I'm married, but I could. It's up in the air though. If you're available, she'd understand. Dr. Aaron Horschig from Squat University, man. That guy has single-handedly healed every single one of my clients.
When you told me about him the first time years ago, I've been hooked on him as well. I've got his book, Rebuilding Milo. Freaking fantastic.
Oh my God, it's such a good book, man. This guy, he's just so awesome, man.
Yeah.
No, seriously though, there's interviews with you mean just rehab in general and stuff, or as far as the assessment stuff goes, or whatever,
I would say
just in general.
Yeah.
So Dr. Peter Attia has had some specialists, some orthopedic surgeons and people of that nature on his podcast. So if you want to learn more about the anatomy in depth from some of these doctors and surgeons and everything, then I would say look up Peter Attia and just look up hip anatomy or shoulder anatomy or whatever. He's got some really good ones that go really in depth from orthopedic surgeon standpoint on these different areas of the body, right? So that's really good. Dr. Aaron Horschig is one of my favorite physical therapists that I've experienced online. There's a whole bunch of different people that I can't even think of off the top of my head. They're amazing, but that guy is the single most important in my life physical therapy practitioner that has played the biggest role in what I do.
Yeah.
There's Dr. Stuart McGill, who is just one of the most world-renowned spine health experts that we've ever had, right? And that guy's just absolutely incredible. And it's not even necessarily that he just understands something about anatomy or physiology more. It's about how he interacts and goes through his assessment processes and everything, and how he thinks about the person that really affects how well people heal from what's going on, right? So he's really good when it comes to healing back injuries and spine health and all that good stuff. There was one more that I was thinking of just a second ago. Peter Attia, Stuart McGill, Aaron Horschig. Man, it's driving me insane right now. Kelly Starrett. Of course, the Godfather.
Well, now,
dude,
now I feel like I should know.
No, he's got the book Becoming a Supple Leopard.
No.
Oh, you don't know that book?
No.
Bro, so good.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. It is a very boring read for any of the viewers out there. If this is not your job, you are not going to want to pick up that book. I'm telling you right now. It is literally a textbook. But if you are interested in this stuff, like, holy crap, it's literally the book on exercise and physiotherapy. So physical therapy is more in the category of like what I do with my practice, right? And in my practice, physical therapy is using motion and exercise to heal whatever is causing you pain. Right? And physiotherapy is the other side of the coin on that one, where they're using manual manipulation and massage and things like that, where they're moving your joint themselves, right? Yeah. So there's a lot more like hands-on application from a physiotherapist, although they do the same thing. They're still using exercise and all that kind of stuff or whatever. But it's more of like the hands-on kind of massagey approach, right? So not to say that physical therapists don't do the massage and that physiotherapists don't do the exercise, right? They all do the same thing, but there's just a little more skew in each category towards those, those other things or whatever. So Kelly Stret is amazing.
I need to look them up then. That'll be my next read right there.
Yeah. Perfect. It's gonna take you a couple years.
Yes, especially because I already struggle with my attention span.
Yeah, it's a long one. Yeah. 1 page a day, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to. Yeah, that'll be a tough one. But that seems like it'd be a really good information.
Mm-hmm.
Really good information to bring about, I guess.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dang. Well, thank you, Daniel. I mean, I really appreciate you coming in and staying a little bit extra long. Apologize to Rochelle for me. Hopefully,
she's fine.
Thank you so much. This was a blast. I'm glad that you were able to come in and do this. And
thank you.
I would love, if you're open to it, I'd love to have you come back and do like just a breakdown, kind of deep dive of like the shoulder, hip, and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love that.
Do like some short form content of just kind of what we do for our rehab, just that way people can also see kind of what we do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, if you want, we can set up something where like maybe I use you as like a visual kind of cue thing or whatever, or maybe I'll bring in some things that I've done with clients before and like walk you through the entire protocol of what I was treating and how it worked and what I had them do and everything.
Yeah, that would be great. That sounds
baby.
Great.
I'm always happy.
Well, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you coming in.
Hell yeah, baby. Absolutely, man. Anytime.